Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer.
Tara Grace Ericson is here with us today. Tara Grace Ericson lives in Missouri with her husband and two sons. She studied engineering and worked as an engineer for many years before embracing her creative side to become a full-time author. She loves cooking, crocheting, and reading books by the dozen. Her writing partner is usually her black lab, Ruby, and a good cup of coffee or tea. She loves a happily ever after with an engaging love story, and that's why Tara focuses on writing clean contemporary romance with an emphasis on Christian faith and living. Thank you for joining us, Tara.
Thank you. I need to update my bio. There's 3 sons now since that has been written.
That is true, and I knew that, and I could have done that, but yeah, there are 3.
I've been trying to update it all the places that it is, but you know how they.
I stole this one off Inspy Romance, so that's your Gravatar bio.
Which you can access.
Yeah,
So do you go by Tara or Tara Grace in a situation like this?
Just Tara is fine.
All righty.
Excellent.
And I'll probably say Tara, so that's just the Aussie way.
That's fine. I can listen to you talk, Narelle, all day. I love you.
When you're updating your bio, you need to add something about how you enjoy creating reels on Instagram, because Tara makes Instagram a much more amusing place to be with her reels. She's dove in head first, and they're very amusing.
It is my new favorite way to procrastinate writing, for sure.
So Tara is joining us to talk about her, can we even call it a recent release? Because it was January, right?
Yeah. I haven't released a new one since then. So
okay, so it's her latest release, her most recent release. So that'll work. Dancing with Dandelion, which was the last book in her Bloom Sisters series. And if you are around the podcast at all ever, pretty much there's always one of these books being mentioned for one reason or another.
Maybe not every week, just every second week.
There we go. a lot. We love this series. And so we were excited to have Tara come talk to us about it. And so I'm not going to read the back cover. In fact, I am going to just say, tell us your author snapshot of the story.
Okay. So Dandelion, who goes by Andy, and you only call her Andy unless you want to incur her wrath, has been in the military for 20 years and away from her family for that time. And as she was retiring from the Army, she is kind of grappling with what comes next. And she moves back home to Bloom's farm, where she's going to take over as the kind of head of security for the operation there. And she runs into someone she knows from her time in Virginia, and they're not on great terms. So this is a enemies to love or hate to love story with some older characters. They're in their, late 30s, early 40s kind of age range. And yeah, he's a Secret Service agent. She's working security on the farm, and her brother-in-law is running for vice president. And so they're interacting throughout the process of working his events.
Excellent. It was a very good snapshot.
Yes.
So I'm going to pass it off. Narelle has the first question.
I do. So I really enjoyed this story. So it was lots of fun. And my question relates to how much I love the meet cute with Andy and Ross at the martial arts studio. I thought that was really cool. So my question is, what inspired you to include martial arts in the story?
I am fascinated by the study of martial arts. I know nothing about it. I've done a few jujitsu lessons, but that's about it.
Yeah.
When I actually had the title first, the title was going to be Dancing with Dandelion, but I didn't know Dandelion when I named the book. But quickly it became clear that Dandelion was not doing any dancing in the traditional sense. And so the idea of dancing as being how they refer to sparring was a really fun twist on it. And so when I thought about why they would be sparring, it became this, well, they're both into martial arts and have been practicing for many years. And yes, the meet cute is one of, maybe not my favorite I've ever written, but perhaps one of them.
Yeah, no, it was lots of fun and it was different. And I always like it when you find a meet cute that's different to what is not the same old she spilt coffee on him type of meet cute that you'll see on a Hallmark movie. So I enjoyed that.
So tell us a little bit about that meet cute then. Let's whet our listeners' appetite for it.
Yeah, so Andy and Ross are at the same dojo in Alexandria, Virginia. This is before she moves back to Indiana.
Okay.
And their sensei decides to pair them for a sparring match. And because, Andy is busy and Ross travels on Secret Service assignments, they have never actually crossed paths yet at the studio that they both attend fairly regularly. And so they both kind of feel like it's their studio, and there's a lot of banter as they fight because there's a little bit of underestimation of their opponent on both sides. And Andy is kind of in not a great mood to begin with during this encounter. So Ross kind of gets a bad shake on his first impression, just due to what's going on in her head. And so,
I love
Andy,
the smack talking. Both of them, they're just like, I'm gonna come out on top, like mentally, verbally, as well as physically. Yeah, that was fun.
yes, the banter was really fun to write. And I think it was one of the things that Ross loved about Andy was that, like, she took his jabs, his verbal jabs, and dished them right back. And he said, he's not used to that. Most of the people he spars with, kind of shut down when he niggles at them.
Yeah, super fun. Valerie?
I found it interesting that she went back home, and not because there's anything weird about going back home, but it made me think about how they say you can never go home again, right? That once you've been away for, more than a week or whatever, things change and you change. So I was interested in what kind of a thought process you went through as you were figuring out how she felt about being home and how home felt about her being there, like the adjustments needed for both sides.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a big adjustment for Andy, bigger than she thought it was going to be, I think. And a part of that, her journey throughout the story, is figuring out, she was kind of groping for her new domain, and
Right.
the assumption that it would be back at Bloom's farm because, the Bloom family is super close knit. And, I think no matter how long you're away from home, there's still this, there's this attachment to it, especially since all of her family was still there. So I think a lot of it was her coming to grips with, is this the place for me? Is it not? And at the end of the story, ultimately she doesn't stay at Bloom's farm.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. It doesn't really spoil the story, but
Not a brand new no.
So I don't know if I never considered the idea of whether you can't go home or you can, but that was where she needed to be at that moment in time, for God to teach her some lessons and to rely on him to write the next chapter of her story. And I think that's one of the great things about all of the stories happening at Bloom's farm, was a really key part of the story. And the tight knit of the family made it a place where she could come back to. That was the safe place where everything else was changing and shifting, but her family and her faith remained kind of that foundation that she could stand on.
She's one of the older siblings as well, too.
Yes.
Right. So
She's the oldest, isn't she? No,
she's not the oldest.
Oh.
Lily is the oldest.
Okay.
Mm.
And then Hawthorne, and then the two twins, Dandelion and Daisy. Yeah.
Right. So some of her siblings were still younger teens than that when she left home. So there would be a big adjustment just in figuring out, I mean, they're her equals. now as they're all adults.
Yeah.
That she would still want to treat them like they were, 12. I would. I mean, I'm the youngest in my family, so I don't really know. Maybe, no, sorry. My
Yeah.
sisters definitely still possibly have trouble remembering that.
Yeah, I think
I'm not
one of
12.
the hard things was tying Dandelion in earlier in the series because she wasn't around for most of the storylines. And so you see some of her siblings reach out for advice or, video call or whatever, or bring her in for a big announcement. They'd video call her in to announce that they were getting engaged or whatever. And so you do see some of that, especially I feel like in Rose and Lavender, they're the babies. And so, they tended to reach out, and always Andy was kind of a safe person to reach out to because of the distance she had from the goings on. She couldn't be intimately involved with the drama at Bloom's Farm, but kind of gave that
meddling.
that outsider perspective. Yeah.
The inside outside. That's interesting. Yeah. Can see that.
So I liked the fact, although probably because of the three of us, Narelle, Valerie, and myself, I am the most likely to read romantic suspense. I think that's a fair
I
statement.
read it.
You read it. You don't hate it like Valerie does.
I do. Years ago,
like to sleep at night.
when I first started writing years ago, I thought about writing romantic suspense, and then I decided that I like to sleep at night. And scaring myself witless is not my favorite thing to do to myself, but I do enjoy reading. I've actually recently read a couple of romantic suspense, and this book is actually what sent me reading some more romantic suspense. So there you go.
So that was where I was. I liked the fact that you sort of this. It's not romantic suspense straight up, but it's definitely like if there's romantic suspense light. There are some suspensey type things that you added to it. And like Secret Service definitely sort of almost requires that, it feels like. But
I think it pretty much does, yeah.
It's
you
hard.
can't have that job and nothing happens in the story. Like,
yeah.
Then he could have been like, I don't know.
He could have been a janitor and it would have been fine.
Accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they needed to be forced to interact for some reason and overcome some things together. So it needed a little bit of intrigue.
But the main characters weren't in danger. And that, for me, for it to be a romantic suspense, you've got to have either the hero or heroine or both of them that are in danger. And so that's why I wouldn't call this romantic suspense. I'd say it's a romantic suspense element.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, Narelle has a definition for every
distinction. I like it.
Here.
Like it.
Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah. So I was gonna sort of ask, what prompted you? Was it just the career choices that pushed it into that lane, or what else prompted that choice to sort of start shifting suspensey-ish? That's my new word.
Ooh.
Suspensey-ish. I think definitely for this particular book, it was the fact that he was Secret Service, and I needed to bring someone that she would have encountered in the DC area and then give him a reason to be in Indiana.
Fair.
Yeah.
Right. And so Secret Service made sense. And I also already had the tie-in with the politics with Harrison and his political career over the course of multiple books. Mm-hmm. And so it just made a lot of sense for that to be their tie-in and for the story to take on some more suspenseful elements.
What was your thought process behind making Harrison running for vice president instead of president?
I think it was more of a realism because he's still very young and fairly new to like the higher politics game. So in his book, he decides to run for governor. So he's a state senator. He decides to run for governor and gets elected. And so he's only been the governor for like 8 years or something. I checked my timeline. I'd have it in there somewhere. But and so like they, politically, they're choosing him for a reason, which is like he's this very attractive, well-spoken white male. But he's not going to be the main candidate. And my, logical, realistic, even as an author, I couldn't make him be chosen for president.
Okay.
So just a clarifying question from someone who doesn't have governors in their country. So is the governor like the leader of the state? So he runs Indiana, which we would call a premier or a chief minister here. Yeah. Okay. So he's basically moving from state politics to federal, the national stage.
Correct.
With this leap. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a big leap, but there have been, governor to VP, governor to president.
It's a pretty normal stepping stone. It feels like lots of, you can pick your presidents. Most of them were governor at some point in there.
It seems logical. It doesn't, from Canada, I look at it and I go, although here our provincial politics is very separate from federal, not very many people cross over. But it's not, outside the realm of belief that could happen. And I think it's maybe more integrated in the States. But I'm curious how much plotting you did for the whole series. Did you know all along? I mean, you knew Andy was in the army and that she would eventually come back, but did you have this all planned?
I didn't know like Andy's specific story until I sat down to write Andy's specific story. I had laid out, where each sister's story fell in the series and kind of what the tropes were for each book along the way. So I knew Andy was at the end, and I knew hers was going to be hate to love, but I didn't know Ross until I sat down to write the book. So.
That sounds similar to the way I do a series as well. I have some general parameters, but until the fingers hit the keyboard, there's a lot of mystery. Suspense even. But
I was trying to open the door when I asked my question. You are, correct me if I'm wrong, doing a romantic suspense series where Ross exists, right? Ross and Andy will exist in that series. Will we see them on the page?
We will. Yes.
Tell us about that.
So kind of at the end of the Bloom Sisters, there are a couple of different directions that readers will get to take, or they can take both. So one is Andy and Ross at the end of the book are starting a security company back in the DC area. And so the first book, they are not the main characters, but they are in the universe. Andy actually does come back and play in a couple of key scenes, which is fun in the book one of the romantic suspense series. The other side is that we're staying near Minden in Indiana with the fire department of the Minden Protection Fire District. And so we meet some of those characters in this book as well and get to follow them and stay. And that will be more pure romance, no major some suspense plots in those.
Not a lot of suspensey-ish things.
I can feel a firefighters episode coming on in our future.
There's not as many firefighter books as you would think.
There's
a few. There's a few.
I can few.
It's harder for specifically Christian. Will your firefighters be CCR or just sweet? Which is not wrong.
Yeah.
CCR. Okay. Cool.
And when is that first one coming out?
The firefighter?
Yeah.
Tentatively at the end of May, but it's
so
been a little bit slow
more when we go to talk about firefighters. It's not like this is some vague dream for 2024 or something, guys.
No, their covers have been revealed, and there's some tentative release dates in the but I'm getting a little bit of a slow start to the writing of that one, so we'll see where we end up as far as release dates.
I like the covers though. They're good covers.
Are fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm so happy with how those covers turned out. Yeah.
You
did real firefighters on them.
You did an Inspi Romance blog post, right? On them. Okay. Yeah. So you can go to Inspi Romance, and the easiest way to find an old post, if you know who it's by, is you click on the authors tab and then you find the author. So scroll to Tara and then click on her name, and it will then list all of her blog posts, and then it's easier to find. So you want to do that because those firefighter covers are incredible.
Yeah. Definitely.
Will you be alternating romantic suspense with firefighter? Okay,
That's
Cool.
the
that's the
idea.
plan. Excellent.
It's always good to have a plan.
Yeah.
They don't always work.
Yeah,
but
whether it works or
have one.
not, there's a plan.
There's a plan. It's good to have a plan so you can say you had one and then you just don't worry about it. And then I see your Freedom Ridge mug. Because I think, did you have other questions about Dancing with Dandelion before we continue to grill Tara about the rest of her writing life?
I'm good.
I think I'm good.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
think we
Go ahead
covered
with the
this
grilling.
story pretty well. So is there a season 3 of Freedom Ridge?
Yes, there is.
Yay. Okay,
Cool.
that's exciting. Will they be romantic suspensey like season 2 was, or are they going to be less romantic suspensey?
You know, I think every book is just different in that series. Yeah, there's no requirement on how much suspense you can or cannot have in that book. So some of the books have been heavier on the suspense, some of them have been lighter, and we just let the authors do what they want. There's
Figure it out.
they have a length, and it has to have a faith arc and a romance and a happy layover after. So pretty much it.
And have we met your characters before?
We have met the female character for my book. I'm not sure yet if we've met. I haven't really figured out who I'm writing about for that book yet.
She hasn't met him yet.
I'm not sure. We maybe not. I'm not sure.
Okay, cool. Exciting. There's a lot of exciting stuff ahead. Is there anything you feel like you need to say about Dancing with Dandelion that you wish we had asked you?
Well, I would say as just a note, like I owe a huge thank you to my friend Brittany, who poured her army story out to me so that I could steal bits and pieces of it to hopefully make Dandelion a realistic character. It was funny to sit down and talk with her, and she's like, "Oh, so you're writing, an army character?" She said, "Don't make her like Lara Croft. We're not, we're not muscle women or anything like that." And so it was really fun to learn, because I am not very familiar with the military. I don't have any immediate family members who have served in this generation, and so I learned a lot. I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes about what her military career would have been like, but I owe a huge debt of gratitude to her for educating me and letting me steal the bits of her story. So
That's the thing. We don't know what we don't know a lot of times too.
Right.
So having somebody who's just willing to, like you say, just dump it out and you can pick from it, that's really helpful.
We can't live every career that we want to write about.
Sorry,
Well, we
readers.
could, but we'd never
Well,
be
and
writing if we did.
That's right.
Well, and I interviewed her almost 2 full years before Dandelion's story came out. So it was like Christmas of 2019 that we sat down and had coffee together, because it was back in my hometown, and that was when I was there and she was there, because she lives in Virginia. And it was helpful to know some of that as I laced Dandelion back into the other books of the series also.
That makes sense.
For sure.
Cool.
I think we've probably covered what's next for Tara, so I don't have to ask you that because we've grilled you on that. Where can everybody find you and your books?
Yeah, definitely on my website is taragraceericson.com. The NSP Romance blog is a good place to find me. And my newsletter, if you sign up for that, you get the first book of the Bloom Sisters you get on audio for free. So that's a good way to dive into the series if you haven't yet. And you also get a couple of other short stories, including one of the romantic suspense lead-ins.
And they can sign up at taragraceericson.com. And you link your Instagram there, so they can follow you on Instagram there.
Probably.
They need to. They need to go. They need to go watch your reels.
on Instagram, I'm Tara Ericson author, I think is my handle.
Mom of 3, one of them relatively recent, means that she doesn't remember for sure where all these things are.
My website, I just try to It's fairly functional. That's
Fairly functional.
That's better than not really at all
Yeah.
functional. So,
No, it's a good thing. I feel like that describes me most days. Fairly functional. I need a t-shirt.
There's a good one. And you'd probably put some math symbols on it for the function part,
For
right?
the function. I totally would.
I love it.
I totally would.
Beth and I
Oh,
share a
goodness.
love of math. So
Yes, indeed. So if you have questions for Tara, you can leave them as comments on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook page. Nobody leaves questions on the Facebook page, but I'm going to keep saying it. So you're welcome.
Because you
to
could.
do it.
You could do it.
But most people leave comments on the YouTube page, which is fine. But I'm sure Tara will come for a week or two after this airs to answer questions. I am not enlisting her to comments on this episode for the rest of her days. So
5 years later.
right, exactly. If you are over there on YouTube watching us, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And you can find information about the podcast at inspiromance.com/storychats. And that's it for this week. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
bye.